Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August edition of the Fortran monthly meeting. Our scheduled meeting or teams for FPM, stdlib, LFortran, social media team, and so on. Next part will be process to suggest and discuss features for 20Y. Next next item is open position at the ACM Fortran forum. Last item is moving FFT pack under fortran-lang. Besides these four, does anybody else have any other suggestions to discuss? So if not, then we'll start with those. So the first item is the teams. So I'll let Sebastian to start the discussion.
All right, so we already discussed forming teams in the last monthly call. So this is so follow-up. So putting some of those points we discussed into action. I'll just quickly share my screen. So what I did, at least for FPM and stdlib now, I was opening a call for maintainers. So here for FPM, and we already got quite a few responses here from Lawrence and Brad. I'm still hoping that John's also showing up. And the same for stdlib. So first thing is to see if we find enough people to actually form a maintainer, a team, which can take over some of the responsibility to organize those projects. And what we mean with organizing projects, for example, summarized here for stdlib. So it's mainly coordinating the project, making sure everything runs smoothly. So looking around at that pull request is notice that if this is a new contributor, they get some help to get to learn all the details they have to know. And other thing is like finding reviews and showing reviewers how they most efficiently work on a pull request. So mainly having an overview over everything that is in stdlib, over everything that has to be done, and the same for FPM. So also setting some kind of priorities, which so if there's a discussion of something we want to implement, then the project maintainers would be the one to say which direction is feasible to get this job done. So if we want to implement something like like disabling the implicit typing in FPM, then we would check. So what are the steps to get there, and what has to be done first to make this actually feasible, and not to make this project, if you just start right into it, too complicated to actually accomplish it. So kind of steering and technical expertise for the project. So that's what I was thinking here.
Cool. So are there comments?
I agree. It sounds to me it's mainly a kind of a technical and administrative kind of role of maintaining a project. So we're not necessarily talking about assigning exclusive power to make long-term decisions on the project, in which I think everybody should be involved. And maintainers are, yeah, basically doing all these, technical things you listed to ensure that the project runs smoothly, and including the meta documentation, basically documentation on how to contribute, how to review, all that stuff. Yeah, this all sounds good to me.
Yeah, the hard part is to find the people, but it looks like, Sebastian, you might be, you've already, based on your results, I think you're one of the most active contributors at the FPM, right? So it'd be kind of natural if you'd be interested in kind of leading the FPM effort with others.
Yeah, exactly. I think I already volunteered myself as a last call. So
Perfect. Then we can just kind of go from there, and then hopefully others can join. I want to help. It's just that I cannot do everything, and so my personal focus is on LFortran, and I really want to only focus on that as my main thing. But in spare cycles, I'm happy to help, and I want to help. In fact, FPM very soon will have to I would like to collaborate with FPM and LFortran how to work together. I have many ideas, but just to give you one, I would like to set up a web page where where FPM is able to call compilers, including LFortran, but also others, and it will check if a package builds. And I don't know about other compilers. It might be that for other compilers it would just be a check, can it build? But for LFortran, I would like to set up a page where it says, can it parse? If it can parse, can it do semantics? If it parses and reformats, does it compile with, let's say, gfortran and test pass? Can it do semantics? Can it compile with LLVM? And can it compile with LLVM and test pass? And so it will be like multiple columns, and I would imagine kind of green and red colors, and people would have immediate idea what the current status is of LFortran support. And I'm thinking for other compilers, we can do the same thing. And then we can then the only question becomes what packages we include in this table. And we can even create packages for, let's say, co-array support. And then either and kind of we can quickly see which compilers support them. And the advantage of doing it this way is that it's a simple answer, yes or no. Either that particular package works or it doesn't. And to me as a user and as well as a compiler developer, it's kind of something that I can trust, as opposed to if I say, let's say LFortran supports Fortran 95. Well, it never truly supports it because there are always, I can guarantee there'll always be some corner cases that will fail. But if the package works, then I can see, yes, I mean, I agree that package works. Maybe some other package, if you modify a few things, will fail, but this package works. So I think this would be very helpful to do. So
So on this topic, I started those for FPM and standard lib, and you also brought up Fortran as well. I think also the web page might be an interesting project where we want to form a team. Of course, at least a web page might be of less interest for a lot of people, so it will be harder to find maintainers. And I think for Fortran, it's up to you to make the call to find volunteers. When you just post it back in the thread, so everybody can find the respective link. Questions: what other projects we want to set up a team to look after?
Well, I guess one last one is social media, like Twitter. So currently, I believe it's Milan, myself, and Lawrence, I think, who have access to the fortran-lang Twitter account, and we are interested.
And Jeremy.
Jeremy, we will be interested to involve anybody who wants to be part of this is welcome to join us. Just let us know. I'll just kind of highlight the policy. We haven't written it down, I believe, but we would like to write it down. But so far, the policy is that if somebody tags the Fortran-lang account on Twitter, we automatically kind of retweet it unless it's a spam. And then posts that maybe don't deserve or not as good for retweet, but mention Fortran in some nice way, we like it from the Fortran-lang account. And then my own policy, at least, is sometimes I would like the account to retweet some work that I've been myself involved in. And so what is myself, then I just email Milan and Lawrence and ask them for kind of permission. That way, kind of reduce the conflict of interest. But I think those are the three pillars. Did I miss anything, Milan?
No, I think that's right. And yeah, we don't have strict or black and white things written down. In general, I think consistent tweeting of content is good. So I think about once a day is good as just my personal arbitrary thing. I I'd prefer not tweeting too much. Like if it's few times per day, it becomes too much. I think people may get a bit saturated or tired of it. So I think having a good, like relatively slow but consistent pace is good. In general, yeah, retweeting, especially like small or new Fortran projects or Fortran programmers who do not necessarily have many followers, to kind of have them show up and elevate them. And yeah, that's basically it. In general, because of the lack of policy about this conflict of interest thing, like when we have our own, say, our own blog post or project, in general, my thing has been to just not retweet my own thing and just let others retweet it if they want. And I think that works well once there's several of us, you know, looking and managing the Twitter.
Yeah, same here. I don't like retweeting myself, and so I just ask others to, if they think,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
they
just
kind of their decision. Yeah. And that's why we would like to have, you know, if any one of you is interested, or anyone listening is interested, being part of it, please let us know. The bigger team, I think, the better. One thing what motivation
I'm
for
sorry.
me to, yeah, go ahead.
Before we drift off, yeah, one more, I would say, unwritten policy is to just not engage in any kind of, not even like by liking posts, so not taking any sides in any kind of like language comparisons or language, or oh, Fortran versus Julia or Fortran versus Python, and any that kind of stuff. Yeah, I prefer just not engaging in any way from the Fortran account.
Yeah, and I think I made a mistake on this once, that I liked some posts and then I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have. You know, it's kind of, you know, we learn as we go. I was gonna say, for me personally, what I like about this Twitter account is that it has, I think, about 1,500 people, which is pretty large reach. And we used it at the last committee meeting to ask people to do a poll about which direction we should go with the ternary operator, I guess. That was very helpful. We got like 80, I think, responses overnight, almost in like one day. And so I think this is such a nice resource to utilize. And it seems to me that people are more than willing to participate. If we ask them a specific question, do you like this or that? And that's been super helpful.
Yeah, and a few dozen of those responses, so maybe about 30%, were not existing discourse users. So there were people who signed up to participate in the poll.
Cool. Any other comments regarding the teams?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask whether we think we might need a team for the website maintenance as well.
I was thinking about something totally different. We have a fairly large number of packages now. Would it be a good idea to scan the code with a tool like FPT? You remember that from John Collins? We could do that on a basis of any package coming in, or something monthly or something. Sort of housework.
Yes, it's an excellent idea. Not just FPT. I think as a community, because most of them are on GitHub or GitLab, it's very easy for us to send pull requests. And I would like to say down the road, let's say in a year or two, let's say LFortran or Flang has some kind of a mode, let's say some kind of a strict mode or something that we as a community kind of like to enforce, let's say, we can easily submit pull requests to all these packages to upgrade. Or let's say we want to move away from some feature that we think should not be used, we can again submit pull requests. And I think this is part like a subset of that, what you just added proposed.
Okay.
Yes, we should do that. Any other comments? I don't see any, so let's move to the next part, which is a process to suggest and discuss features for 20Y. So unfortunately, Steve Lionel is not here. I was hoping he would be here, but that will be done in close cooperation with him. I'll at least present my vision, what I'm hoping to achieve, and then I would be very much interested in hearing your feedback. So on kind of a high level, the way I think about this is that let's say there was no standards committee. Let's say we were Julia, Python, or Rust. How would we organize and propose and implement new features in the language? And that's what we should try to do as a community. And then we should get, and once we have a vision and once we have kind of a process and features and wide involvement of the community, we of course, I want to involve WG5 and closely, with them to actually implement it in the standard. And it seems by talking with Steve so far, it seems he is not against. He just, my understanding of him is that he wants me and us to make clear that any such effort is separate from WG5, which it will be separate. So that we will make that clear. And so to kind of unpack that a little bit, like how I'm hoping to achieve that. First is to agree on a kind of a long-term vision of Fortran. And we have an issue open, and I would like to kind of get a kind of a wider agreement. Then the next step is to create a list of candidate features. So we can use Discourse or the J3 GitHub repository and the Incubator Repository, and figure out what would be a good list of features for 20Y. So it cannot be too long, it shouldn't be too short. We should also decide, do we want a huge change or a small change? All these things are open. Next step should be to then, discuss all this and discuss these candidates. And then once we have a kind of good idea of what, let's say 10, 15, 20, I don't know, depends on the discussion, but let's say 20 kind of candidates, we should run a poll, I think, to see what the wide community would think. And I think there are ways to do a kind of like a rank-based poll. So multiple choice, you can actually rank it yourself. And then there are multiple kind of voting systems, how to order it globally. And I think we should use our Twitter account and as much reach as we can to kind of get input on that. And the goal would be to, when the window opens at the WG5 Fortran Standards Committee for features for 20Y, to have a good list essentially ready, backed by a poll, backed by a discussion. Hopefully many of these proposals would have some kind of a preliminary proposal. And I also would like to prototype as many of these proposals as I can, as we can in LFortran. I've done it in the past for the ternary operator a little bit, and I would like to just do it for most of these. And with that, I think the WG5 committee would be, and also I would like to involve as many people as I can from the committee. There's Milan, Gary, myself, and Brad already just at this call, and I'm hoping to involve as many as I can. And I think with this approach, I'm hoping that we kind of a simple goal is to make the wide community own the direction of Fortran. What I see, kind of the dynamic that I see, is that I see a lot of people unhappy with how they feel that the direction of, or future direction of Fortran is decided without them. And I would like to change. And I think the best way to change it is to involve them in the 20Y standard. So that's kind of my vision, and I will be interested in what you think.
Is there anywhere publicly or easily publicly to find out what has been proposed and prioritized by WG5 for next features?
For 20X or 20Y?
Either.
So it's, I don't for 20, well, my understanding of the 20X is that there was a poll that was before I joined the committee, and then the poll itself had wide participation. If I might be mistaken, but I think about 600 people have contributed to the poll.
I vaguely remember about 1,500 being.
Oh, even 1,500, even better. Okay, so that's that's really good. Yes. By the way, regarding the numbers, one of the objections from Steve is that our community at Fortran-lang is still too small, which I agree. It's, but we will make it bigger. The Fortran-lang Twitter account has about 1,500 people. That's not bad. It's still too small. The for comparison, Julia account has about, I believe, 20,000, and Rust account has about 80,000 followers. And so I would like to get, at least, a couple dozen thousand, tens of thousands of followers. That should allow us to have, wide enough reach. Anyway, so for 20x, my understanding, there was this poll, and then the committee just decided based on this poll which features to add in. Just didn't have enough. They did not have ready proposal. They just kind of selected these features. That's my understanding. And once they select them, they selected them, I believe, at the Tokyo meeting in 2019. It was after I joined the committee, but I could not make that meeting. It was, international and far and so on. It was just set in stone. And so what I would like to do for 20Y is to take the lead on this effort and involve the community from the start, and not just with the poll, but from the start, which means deciding the as I mentioned, the vision, how we are going to discuss that, how and then actually spend a lot of time discussing these kind of a package for 20Y. It's similar to the Incubator Repository, except that the Incubator Repository is kind of open-ended. It doesn't specify any particular version. What I would like to do with this effort is to just focus on 20Y. So if there are some features that are just impossible or too difficult to do, or just out of scope, or we decide what's out of scope, but point is, if it, I want to kind of very focus on 20Y with the goal, we would talk with Steve when is a good time for the WG5 committee to consider new features. I expect a year from now, maybe 2 years. So that gives us enough time to do a good job. And I would like to have a really nice draft, a community-backed draft of what we would like. And then with that, I think the next job obviously will be to convince the committee, but because we will involve the committee as many people as we can in the process, I expect that the committee would be very much reasonable and adapt many of these proposals in, and they will maybe look elsewhere too, and that's okay. So that's
my point was kind of that I feel like the communication here is a lot one-sided when it comes to the committee. Is like they do get lots of feedback from the community, and as far as I can tell, they take that into account. But the community doesn't get much feedback from the committee. Like, where are we? What's going in, when, and why? And is there a list of things that you guys are working on? Is there a list of things that comes next? Like, somebody who's not on the committee doesn't really have much chance of seeing any of that stuff.
That's right. And
it's
so
just not publicized.
Right. And so with this process, go ahead, Milan.
And even for the members of the committee, as far as I know, the best way to kind of make that list is to browse down the papers and read them and see what happened. Like there's no main list that summarizes, okay, this is being worked on, this is going, this is not going. And I think that's much needed.
So there is an issue. So Zach and I always create an issue at the Incubator Repository for every meeting, and we document every proposal, and we try to link to other issues that concern what goes in, so that at least you can kind of track what goes in at the given meeting. Yes. Anyway, and so we, that I would say those are all questions for the committee. As you know, I try to run for the chair, and I encourage you to also consider running for a chair once it opens up, both the international and the US. And I think that's the way to influence it. Become a chair, become a WG5 winner, and then we can, try to make it more transparent and so on. But until then, I think the best way we can is what I proposed, essentially doing it. And Steve even asked to do it separately from the committee, and so that's what we should do it separately from the committee. And then we can be as transparent as we can and involve two-sided communication with the community and involving as many members of the committee as we can. And I'm pretty excited about it. I think that it can really excite the community seeing an effort like that. And as I said, I think if we do all this and have the proposals, at least some ready and some prototyped and discussed, I think that the committee will, might even just take it or at least base their features on that.
I would just like to see, and I think the community would find it very helpful if we just had a more prominent, easy to find location that was kept up to date of like, here's what the committee's working on and their priorities. So that I don't have to go find a GitHub issue. I don't have to scroll through the J3 papers. Like somewhere that I can go that it's like, oh, here's a summary of what's being worked on.
So how about we have a section at the fortran-lang.org say future features, and then it would summarize the current status of the committee, just kind of exactly as you described. We have an issue at the at the Incubator Repository, so we have the data. We just have to summarize it. This is the current status. This is the plan of the committee, and then we can have a section there about the 20Y effort separate from the committee, describing this is our goal, this is the process. Get involved. This is how we do that, and then like I just almost cannot see how this can fail, because if we have good proposals, even if like we can even submit them individually, if they, but of course what I want to have is a nice draft of features for 20Y and have it as a nice package that and we'll be in touch with Steve Lionel and have his input on that, and hopefully it's kind of a blessing down the road. And if we do, then I think it will help everybody. And I think the committee itself, they repeatedly asked, a lot of people at the committee asked for community help with writing proposals. And so this would provide precisely that.
And I also think long-term, if we can get this organized so that, we have this roadmap of here's the things we're working on, it will make it a lot easier to get feedback from the community in terms of, okay, why don't you guys go ahead and at least release the standard now so we can get some of the things you've already finished, rather than wait until those last few things are done, right? And we can get into a more rapid pace of releasing new versions of the standard.
Yes.
Because right now it's like 5 years ago, we decided what we wanted in and it's not done yet. So we can't release the standard. Well, that's too inflexible. I mean, nobody gets a chance to say, no, I think what we've done so far is worth a release of the standard.
Gary, go ahead. It looks like you have some comments.
Just a couple of things. One, there's no question that the standard does not run like if we ran our businesses and our projects like this, we'd all be fired. Both in terms of setting a work plan, tracking the work plan, communicating the work plan out. I think I'm the only person here who was in Munich when we started looking at what was going to be done for the next release of the standard, and my understanding of the process is a little is based on one data point, right? What we saw for 202X. There were a lot of from the country organizations into WG5. There were a lot of potential things bubbled up into to be addressed. And there is a 202X work plan document that was a spreadsheet and a PDF and a bigger collection of the original inputs from each of the country organizations that we went through, and we did kind of the U.S. organization, who is subcontracted to do the the language definition, winnowed through a lot of the proposals, and triaged the ones to attempt for 202X, and that's what's in the work plan document. Let me see if I hang a second, here's a link to it, and for some reason, probably related to stupid stuff, it's in a PDF document as opposed to the actual like an Excel spreadsheet or something. But it also includes, for every work item, summary, a quick name for the feature, and what happened across a number of the meetings with respect to each of those items. The if you can't see it or can't get to it, I can share my screen, I think. Let's see.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen if you can do it.
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen. And we'll share this one. And this is, where was it? It's in Brave. Okay. This is still tiny, so let me see if I can make it bigger. This is about as big as I can make it. But you can see at least, here's each of the things had a WG5 identifier from the country and a serial number. Each of the things had a brief description and then a list of the papers and stuff and what happened with the voting. It doesn't look like anything was done after meeting 220, which was what, over a year ago. So this obviously hasn't been kept up to date relative to my comment about managing this like a project. And you'll notice huge numbers of them came from the US, and that's because J3 acts as the funneling organization for everything from the US, and there's a lot of activity from the US, and the UK had a few things, and I thought maybe Germany or Italy had something in the list, but I don't see it. I don't at a glance see it mentioned here. But something like this is likely to happen again. Steve will come up with a let's throw a wide net to get input. Let's let each of the country organizations provide their input, and then we try to rationalize that list down to something that we can reasonably work on. So that's just the historical context, and this is a pretty good map of, it'd be even better if it wasn't a PDF document and you actually had, you could click on a link to the document that you're, the documents that are of interest, and even maybe be able to see the differences in the conversation as it, as evolved on a topic. But it wasn't that there was nothing, it was just that nobody knew where it was.
And you'll notice that this doesn't have a status or a priority.
Yes.
Or even a date.
But that's my point. Like, even if you put this and made it public, it's still missing the key information that somebody who wants to know about this stuff would want, right?
Yes.
If we could get that,
And
then
it's not up to date.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Not least of which, it's not up to date.
Yes.
So I created issues for most of these at the Incubator Repository. So like the query, maybe not the query components, but a lot of these I just created an issue, and then I tried, as my time allowed, to kind of track what the latest status is with the proposals, try to link them and so on. And I think that so let's brainstorm how we can do it for the 20Y. Actually, what I would like to do is do it for 20X too. Just have a page at fortran-lang.org. Maybe this list, this is kind of, the changes doesn't change essentially. So we would have a list, and then for each item, we can have a link to the GitHub, let's say, issue. And then at the issue, you just scroll to the end and see what the latest status is. And then it's easy for anybody to update with, if there is a late, development on it, we can update it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that we can't. I don't expect J3 to invest any time in this, sadly. And so for us to have something like a sidecar that points into the J3 pieces that are J3, and to otherwise summarize project status, priority, and progress, I think is probably the way we're going to have to go until we can get J3 to say it's their job.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of the Incubator Repository. Well, I was hoping for it to be more than just an incubator, but also a tracking of precisely what we just discussed. And I think we can still make it happen and track it, do our best. So we should, okay, that's a good point. So I'm thinking to create this page at fortran-lang, have a 20x section, which is kind of in the final stages, but still kind of at least try to link it to the issues, and so that people can see, yes, this is what's coming. And then for 20y, I'll start with the vision. What is our? I start discussing it at I use the Fortran-lang discourse. The first step is to figure out the vision for, well, in general, and it might be if it's too difficult, then at least for the 20y. What is our vision for 20y? What do we want to achieve? Do we want a huge change or a small change? Stuff like that. Once there is some kind of community agreement on that, we'll start. And also, well, the next step will be to start brainstorming. So once we kind of frame, is it a big standard? Is it a big change or a small change in 20y? It probably should contain the generics, probably. What else? We'll brainstorm what else should go in, or how many, and then we'll just discuss. And I expect, I don't know what the result of the discussion will be, but I think there will be a lot of discussion on that. And so.
And just I'm sorry, you finish. I don't mean to interrupt. I can't help it. I just can't help it.
No, I was pretty much finished. Go ahead.
Okay. When we first had the discussion of 202x and 202y, the expectation was that X would be a small revision, because it took roughly 8-10 years to get 2018 out. So X would be a small revision and Y would be a big revision. And that's why generics ended up in that's part of the reason why generics ended up in Y, and why there's a relatively small number of things that are in X. I think it was also a hope that a small set of revisions would lead to a faster cycle time, which has not shown itself to be true necessarily. But that was the original. That was the original idea, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in Y to potentially not just add some big features, but I personally would like to see us delete some features that have been lingering around as deprecated forever, in the hopes that we can simplify the implementation process moving forward of 202 from 202y and beyond. There are very few people who are fans of deleting features, but because they feel like the compilers still have to support them because they compile the universe. But for fuck's sake, some of these things got to go, if you pardon the expression.
Has there ever been a compiler written that started from the latest standard instead of the first standard?
Yes.
Yeah, the F18 and LFortran, they both.
And LFortran, you're right. F18 and LFortran both started with the current standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
We implemented free form, and I am now just going into fixed form because
Okay.
and fixed form, I don't know if it's deprecated or not, but from a compiler's perspective, and I was hoping I don't have to implement some of these old features, and then sure enough, I asked people to test the parser, and they report, oh, this doesn't work, and so. As a compiler, you have to implement everything anyway, no matter what. Right. And in fact, you have to implement things beyond the standard, even beyond the current standard, because just you want people to use your compiler. You want it to compile code, and I personally want the compiler to be. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there are a lot of vendor extensions that people implemented across multiple vendors. We had, when I was at NVIDIA, we had bug reports about somebody saying, "Hey, my program doesn't work right when I have OpenMP and entry statements," and
And so, yeah, and so I think what compiler support is separate. Well, I was going to finish. I want to also the compiler to be able to upgrade your code automatically. And so being able to parse it and understand it in the first place is essential for that. So compilers, I would say, is a separate issue, but the standard itself, yeah, I think it should contain the modern approach and let compilers handle the old stuff.
Well,
so
partly my point was that new compilers could start with the newer standard, and having features that are deleted is clear, makes it clear that they don't need to implement them if they're starting from the newer standards, or at least don't have to implement them first.
Yes.
Yeah,
actually,
in practice, they can't get away with that. That even F18, supports pretty much, damn near everything but the pause statement, I think. The extra, and part of it was a desire for adoption. They wanted to be able to take the broadest collection of programs and be able to compile them. And so that meant, even though they were starting with 2018, there's a ton of non-standard features that are implemented nonetheless.
Yeah, same with LFortran. Milan.
Actually, I think on this course from Steve Lionel, I learned that all previous revisions of the standard are invalid relative to the current standards. Current standard is the only one that's valid in present. So when you start with a new compiler, you aim for the new standard, but then whether you support older features is then down to what users do you target, like what's the target audience. And I think Gary said, if you want to support a very broad range of programs, many of them are fixed form, have older style statements, then you go into older standards.
Right. Yep. So we have 13 minutes. Anybody else, any other comments on the 20Y?
Yeah, related to this, I just want to, just as a placeholder so that we kind of don't forget about these things, like in the pipeline of producing and releasing a new standard, one important bottleneck is who edits the document, and currently that's just Malcolm, the editor. We discussed around the previous meeting how could we help Malcolm basically to do this better. One idea was to make the LaTeX sources editable and managed on GitHub. So just a note placeholder that conversation continues. And yeah, and another one was how do we make the community larger, get more members so that people can help, more people can help. One idea I think also Gary suggested is to make fortran-lang a member. That would give us basically one additional voting member, one alternate. I think we could do that through num-focus without doing any kind
Alternates.
of more of
as many alternates as you want.
Oh, it's many alternates. Okay, got it. Yeah, so if we manage to raise funds, I think it's about $1,300 a year. We could do it through num-focus without any extra bureaucracy on the Fortran-lang side of things. And I think that would be a great boon.
Yes, and part of the reason why I also want to do the 20Y effort, as we just discussed, is to get more people involved. And once you get more people involved, the next step is to convince them, why don't you also join the committee to actually have a say in the actual standard. So cool. Any other comments?
Yes, I was thinking that the activities of the committee should also be posted on Fortran discourse at some regular interval to show that they exist and what they are working on. It's one thing to have it on Fortran-lang, but that's fairly static. And the discourse is more about discussions. So I think it's one way to at least show the world that the committee is working on things.
I missed the beginning. You were saying that the committee members should share what they work on.
Well, whatever form we think of that, but for me, it would be more visible on Discourse than if it is in one of the repositories of the fortran-lang GitHub site.
Well, I think unfortunately you already are seeing what the committee members are working on. Not much, because we are all busy. But with the 20Y effort, what I'm hoping is to make this kind of transparent. Then you should be able to see what. I don't work with. I don't think I work on anything privately. If I work on anything, I always share it publicly. If I don't share it, means that I don't work on it.
But that's now on an ad hoc basis. If meetings could be announced or something, so that the activities are visible. That's what I mean. I'm not doubting that you are doing a good job on this. Certainly not. It's just that if I want to know what's going on, I now have to dig into the list of documents, which is quite vast. Well, we discussed that. Whereas if I just go to Discord and see what new posts are there, I'm confronted with that sort of activities. I'm fairly lazy in that respect. I must admit that my my relation to Twitter is something like Gary's to Kansas.
Yes. So I think what Brad suggested and what the conclusion we came to, which is to create a section at Fortran-lang listing the 20X and then 20Y with links to more discussions. Does that go towards fixing what you suggested, or?
More or less, but I have to be reminded of that.
Yeah, when it gets updated, somebody should write up a post, at least on the discourse of like, hey, here's the updates. If you want to really go see, if you want to see all the details, go see here. And, it's still a summary, but it also points to more details.
Precisely, yes.
So maybe what you're asking is that after the committee meets, let's say you would like some kind of a discussion and discourse about that.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be much, but at least that you're triggered that it's there.
We actually, maybe a year ago, I've written with Zach and Milan, I think, like a blog post that we posted at Fortran-lang, but I didn't have time and last couple of meetings, and so it just didn't happen. But I think I would like to resume it. Gary.
Well, otherwise, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Arjun.
Oh,
go ahead, Arjun.
Otherwise, we could use this monthly call to keep each other on the edge to do something like that. I mean, any of us can also post something about what the committee has been up to. And if we keep that as an agenda point, then we are reminded of that, despite of all the business of this world.
And Gary?
The thing I was going to mention, and I don't know how to resolve it, is I have probably 8 or 9 different places I look every week to see what's going on with Fortran. And to Arjun's point, nobody, it's almost impossible to stay up on them all unless you're looking at them all the time. And and it could be everything from Flang Slack channel to compiling Fortran to the Fortran wiki to the GitHub proposals to the GitHub issues that get filed to Fortran-lang and the discourse, and there's no consolidating mechanism to say, hey, here's a summary of the shit that's going on. And oh, by the way, and if you don't see anything from Fortran, Flang Slack, it's because there's nothing going on in Flang in that arena. But they do have like 3 or 4 different conference calls every week or two related to the technical side or the project side or to OpenMP or to the driver. Is anybody familiar with what Sasha Chua does for Emacs besides me? Have you seen Sasha Chua's weekly email? Hang on a second, let me see if I can pull one up. let's see. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, I know her stuff. It's great. She's a real trooper. I can't. It's been a long time since I followed that, but something like that would be cool for like communicating standard stuff.
Yeah. She's exactly. She's a national treasure. Let's see. Here, every week she publishes an Emacs news blurb that's got what's going on in the various things, everything from where upcoming events or tutorial stuff for beginners that just showed up, or if you're interested in Emacs Lisp, or if you're interested in Emacs development as a whole. Org mode has a whole section. Mail and news, web, the specific flavors of Emacs that are popular now, Spacemacs and Doom. What's going on in community? Here's the Reddit link to the weekly tips and tricks. And she just like clockwork publishes this every week as to something that's going on.
So
I don't know how she does it all, but the point is that a weekly update, something that's like this, that's going on, might be of use, even if it's, for this is mostly just a bullet list of links to other things as a consolidating mechanism. I think it's a very effective tool. I wish we had one.
So we have the monthly newsletter. Isn't that exactly what you just described?
That's what I was going to say.
We should do
I mean, not that it couldn't be,
but the medium.
not that it couldn't be improved, but that,
Yeah, no, it should be improved.
Yeah, I think it's the only thing I would say is if it comes on a monthly heartbeat, then it's even if you're up to date on that, you're behind on what's going on, and that there's an immediacy to the weekly thing that means that it's easy to stay on top of it without having to, do all these things yourself. So but again, this is just a. I'm not volunteering, and I don't know if anyone can.
That's a separate question, but your suggestion is to not do it monthly but weekly. That's the main suggestion.
Or something that's Arjan's point about using discourse as a means of having it be a little more immediate. That's all. So
I think
I was echoing that.
Yeah, I think we should consider it, and I think we should see. I think we should consider that. Yeah, we should strive for it. The question is, of course, who's going to do that? We've been having trouble getting the monthly newsletter out on time. And we were always late, and then we decided we'll move it. No matter what, we'll release it on the first of the month. And by doing that, we lost all the flank updates, so as a side effect, because so that is also not ideal. But maybe moving to a weekly, that way they would not. Maybe people would get used to submitting their updates on kind of a regular basis. And if you miss one weekly update, it's not a big deal. There'll be another one. So.
Or in her case, I think in Sasha Tua's case, I think she's the one who goes out and polls all that stuff, as opposed to expecting people to provide updates. But we have a broad community with a lot of activity going on, so I don't know if it's as easy to do.
So, in the interest of time, because I will leave this account in
I was gonna say, why don't we continue the discussion later? Arjan, do you want to go ahead and go with the ACM editor?
Yeah, I saw this message from Ian Chavez. He's resigning the position, and I think it was 1.5 years ago. I talked to Damien Lusson about his stepping in.
Yeah, I just got off the phone with Damien before this call, and he was a little bit caught off guard because he thought he had already taken up the mantle as the editor, so didn't know he had been fired.
Okay. So then I suggest that we get in touch with Damien about what to do here. Yes,
Yeah,
very bright ideas, but
I sent an email to Jeff saying that, suggesting that he talk with Damien and see see if they can work out what they want to do. But yeah, it caught me off guard. It caught Damien off guard. So hopefully we can figure out what's going on.
Yeah, we should communicate that with Damien and go from there.
Yeah.
Since we are kind of out of time, last item on that list was moving FFT back under Fortran-lang, and I posted the link with the exact proposal. I'll send
I
it.
think there was already a large discussion at the FPM registry, and we can probably continue this on the discourse as well.
Yeah, I guess you can quickly tell me, are there any like big objections?
I would say basically the policy ought to be that if the maintainers of that project are okay with moving it under the Fortran-lang and want to keep contributing to it, like, then by all means do so.
Exactly.
That's all I wanted to hear. I'm the maintainer and Ziha on this call, also the maintainer. So we want that to happen. So cool. We'll continue our discourse. All right. Anything else anybody wants to bring up at this phone call? Well, thank you very much. Looks like there's a lot more discussion on the 20Y. I'll make sure that will happen. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and I'll see you in a month.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.